Josh Parcell joins us, college football country, as we talk college football and a big weekend coming up, certainly one big game. And before that, you got the second round of the college football playoff rankings will be released tonight. We welcome Josh Parcell to Big Board Sports on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio. Josh, Roger Weiland, Chris Honorado, good morning.
Morning, fellas. How are you?
We're good, man. How are you doing? We'll all be watching tonight to see what changes, if any, at the top, but I don't expect any, Josh, right? Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson?
Yeah, I think you can expect that. I mean, all the top five teams in the rankings from last week will be behind them, but I don't think it'll affect anything at the top. Clemson picking up a nice win against NC State. I think that should be enough to hold them, or hold Oklahoma.
All right, talking with Josh Parcell, I mean, we got a little problem with his cell phone. I agree. I don't see any changes at the top. How far will Miami move up tonight? And then this game this weekend is just absolutely huge for both teams, Notre Dame and Miami. Notre Dame, who's favored, Chris? Is it a 3-point Miami favored by 3?
Notre
Dame on the road. Okay, Notre Dame by 3 on the road. I think Notre Dame wins this game. I just do. I think Notre Dame wins this game. I mean, Miami's had a lot of close calls. I think Notre Dame goes in there and plays a big game and wins. And then if they do, they're going to put themselves, the Irish, in position to be in that top 4.
Yeah, if Notre Dame finds a way to win at Miami, they're set up. Navy, they should handle at home, and then obviously, they'll wrap up on the farm at Stanford. And we've got Josh back with us here. So yeah, Raj, I'm a little surprised. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised they're favored, even though they're on the road. But
Miami's undefeated.
Miami is, and that's, so a lot of people overlooking that.
You're undefeated at home.
And a nice win over Vatek last week.
Right, and you're not favored. We are now rejoined by Josh Parcell, college football country. Josh, are you surprised at the line on the Notre Dame-Miami game?
Not really. I mean, I know Miami's at home, but at the same time, I mean, look at Notre Dame's performances this season. They've been just so much more convincing, really week in and week out, than Miami. And, if you treated Miami's season like a report card, they'd have a bunch of C's and maybe a couple D's and then one A. And that was the Virginia Tech game. But outside of Virginia Tech, I mean, Miami really hasn't done anything to prove that it's one of the 8 to 10 best teams in the country. Now, I was impressed with their win on Saturday, but Notre Dame is much more equipped to go up against that Miami defense than Virginia Tech was. They're older, more experienced, just quite frankly more talented. I mean, Notre Dame's a much better team. This is a stiffer test for Miami than what they faced a week ago. And I think the Irish are one of the 4 or 5 best teams in college football. I think the Irish are going to win the game. I'm not surprised they're favored at all.
And even though Josh Adams didn't play the second half of that Wake Forest game, he was cleared to return to play, and Notre Dame says they decided to hold him out. He is certainly in the Heisman running, as we're joined by Josh Parcell. Check out the website, cfbcountry.com, and you can find him on Twitter just simply at Josh Parcell. Josh, handicap this Heisman race for us, if you would, now that Saquon Barkley has struggled here in the last few weeks. And obviously Baker Mayfield has a huge day against Oklahoma State. Mentioned Josh Adams. Where do you go with a top 3 or 4 when it comes to the Heisman?
Yeah, this has really been an interesting year. It seems like nobody's really grabbed hold of the race. I mean, Barkley seems like he had an edge around the midpoint of October, but I mean, he hasn't showed up in the last 3 weeks. I think Barkley's Heisman candidacy is pretty much done at this point. In my mind, I think Baker Mayfield's the favorite. I mean, put up 600 yards against Oklahoma State. He's got a team in the thick of the playoff race right now. Josh Adams certainly has a good chance as well. Lamar Jackson has put up tremendous numbers. It's kind of funny that Lamar has kind of fallen off the radar because Louisville just hasn't been relevant nationally, but Lamar's actually having a better year than he did last season. If I had to put my money on one person right now to win the award, it would probably be Baker Mayfield. But this is, I think I can say, the least impressive field of Heisman candidates that I've seen probably in about 5 to 10 years.
Josh, let me ask you, who, in your opinion, who is your best team in college football right now? Is it Georgia?
So there's a difference in my mind between best and most deserving. I mean, I think the team most deserving of the number 1 ranking is Georgia, just based on the way they played, the quality of the opponents they played, a little bit more so than Alabama. But the best team in the country is Alabama. They have the deepest backfield. They have tremendous athletes at receiver. Jalen Hurts is improving as a quarterback. And then the defense, although the defense is starting to pile up a few injuries, Micah Fitzpatrick battling that hamstring injury, a couple other players out on the linebacking core, I still think Alabama is just deep enough to sustain that kind of attrition, and this is as dominant of an Alabama team as I've seen in really 6 or 7 years. Nick Saban's got a loaded group, and I think the Tide are the odds-on favorite to win the championship for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you play Georgia, Alabama right now, Alabama wins that game. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. And Alabama may win it and may win it big. I think you're 100% right there. And then there's my Penn State team that was right there. And then not only do they, the Ohio State loss, but then last week, I mean, what did you make of Iowa destroying Ohio State? Is that just a hangover with the Buckeyes coming off the win over Penn State 39-38 and the big come from behind win at home? What did you make of the Big Ten? They played themselves right out of anything.
Yeah, I mean, that is the most surprising game of the entire season. And Iowa has played well at home. Over the last 20 years, they've played well at home against top 10 teams, but to see something like that was just really stunning. And Ohio State sort of unraveled as that game went on. Obviously, losing Bosa to the targeting penalty hurt them. But look, Iowa ran for 250 yards in that game against that Ohio State defense. That's just unacceptable if you're the Buckeyes. And this is another example of Urban Meyer having a team in position to contend for a national championship and falling short. The only time that he has exceeded expectations at Ohio State was the year they won the national title in 2014. And he's a tremendous coach. He's one of the 4 or 5 best in the country, obviously with a couple national championships on his resume, 3 to be exact. But at Ohio State, they have lost games that have kept them out of a national championship race just about every season in Columbus. Even the year they won it, they lost to Virginia Tech. So they've lost games. They've made a habit of losing games they shouldn't. And that's disappointing if you really look at the full scope of what Urban Meyer's done at Ohio State. They actually probably could have done a little bit more than they have at this point.
And Josh, you guys are talking about Heisman Trophy. The week before, we were all over Barrett, right? Oh, he has now played himself into this Heisman race. I was watching on Fox. Those guys could not have overhyped it. Shut up. Okay, it's one stinking game. Then he goes and plays like garbage on the road. Now what are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, that was it. That was the end of the road for JT Barrett. And I never wrote off Barrett even after the Oklahoma loss. I thought that we were kind of turning our backs on Barrett and the Buckeyes way too early. Kind of thought I was proven right after the Penn State game, and then they go and lay that sort of egg. And that's just the type of game you're not going to recover from. So you're right. I mean, Barrett, he's had a great career, but unfortunately it's not going to end with a Heisman Trophy for him. That was it for him.
The website is cfbcountry.com. Again, you can find Josh on Twitter at Josh Parcell and Raj on the website. Josh will also give you some of his picks against the spread in college football. I need all the help I can get in our head-to-head picks. I may be dipping into that this week, and we may settle some things in the Big 12 this week too, Josh. And I know we've got to let you go here, but Oklahoma TCU is a big one that could go a long way in deciding who gets into the top 4 out of the Big 12.
Yeah, huge opportunity for TCU to kind of redeem itself after the loss a couple weeks ago. They looked good against Texas. Oklahoma, now this is a situation where the Sooners might be in a similar boat to what Ohio State was in this past weekend. How do you bounce back after a huge emotional win against a division rival, and are you able to sustain it? And that's a really hard thing for top college teams to do. These are 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. It's very hard to maintain the same level of attention to detail and emotion week after week. I think TCU is going to put a scare in the Sooners. Ultimately, I like Oklahoma to win, but I think it's very close, and I think it's inside the 7-point number that you see in Vegas right now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I did not enjoy watching Oklahoma State last weekend. Did not enjoy that one bit.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I mean, I know it's not 5 years ago, it was kind of this new novel thing where you saw these shootouts, but it's actually funny, you guys talking about Vegas. There hasn't been an over-under in the Big 12 lower than 45 in 6 years. That's just kind of the way you see games go in the Big 12 these days. I mean, it's fun for me, but I understand people who long for the old days of 21-17, pound it out, run the ball 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Right. Well, listen, we love college football here in the capital region, and we're going to be following tonight and the rest of the way. I guess none of this really matters until the final rankings come out on December 3rd. But high drama, and I am looking forward to Saturday night, sitting down, being able to watch Miami Notre Dame. That is a huge game.
Yeah, it's going to be big. Like Miami, there's an opportunity for Miami, I think, if they win this game, to finally claim that they're just they're almost back to how they used to be, but they need to win this game. Virginia Tech wasn't enough. You got to knock off a top 5 team and do it in convincing fashion.
Josh Parcell, thanks for a few minutes here on Big Board Sports.
Thanks, guys.